All right, today I'm with JB, and we are going to do a little talk about starting a project fiberglass car. Now this, of course, the Daimler's fiberglass.
Yes.
But this is an American fiberglass car. Some people recognize it's a Corvette.
Right.
And it's a kind of a new project here for the shop. That's,
right.
What are we going to do with this, JB?
Well, earlier on, the customer brought the car in because it had had some kind of goofy aftermarket nose grafted on it sometime in its life.
Okay.
And so what he did is he went out and bought the stock fiberglass front end replacement piece.
Okay.
And then our job was to take off the old stuff and then kind of seamlessly refit the new part, and remembering that the guy that makes this bottom piece here isn't necessarily concerned about the other guy.
Right.
They
right.
never saw each other.
Cool.
Or talk.
Okay, so this, obviously a repair, this was to get back to the original.
Right.
Actually.
This whole nose section here
Okay.
was some goofy, trout mouth looking thing, and
Okay.
so the customer wanted to go back to stock, which
All
is,
right.
as time goes on, the priorities and the things that people think about when they're looking at a car change, and customization was a big deal earlier on, several years ago, and then this guy got this car with this customization on it and looked at it and got physically ill. So he said,
Right.
just put it back the way it used to be. And
Okay.
customizing car comes with a very heavy cost. You got to remember, you're maybe doing it because you like it, but the rest of the world may hate it. So it's
Right.
very
pretty
difficult.
risky, huh?
Yeah, very risky, especially with a car like this now. Corvettes, like every other car, got to the point where they were virtually worthless.
Yeah.
Every car gets there, believe it or not. And then it comes back up, hopefully, if it's got anything going for it. So now the Corvette, the 61.
This is 61?
The 61,
Okay.
we know because I wrote it on the hood.
Okay.
Corvettes have this kind of all look alike in eras.
Yeah,
They
right.
kind of blend.
My guess was going to be 62, so I would have been off just a
Right,
bit.
and there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
If you're a Corvette guy, you immediately see the differences.
Right.
But in any case, this car is trying to go back to the way it came out of the factory. So this
Okay.
this panel was made at an aftermarket manufacturer, and they did a very good job, honestly, of making the parts such that they made up. But you got to figure out
What's
where,
involved in grafting a piece like this?
It's pretty complicated, really. Firstly, you need to have some of the components that are going to go back on it,
Right.
because they play a part in where do you start and stop. You can see a clear line here. We've left this kind of clear for you to see how this
Yeah.
works, but we're going to try and feather edge this down and feather edge that down, and then we put little layers of fiberglass mat, and then we finish with a layer of cloth like you see here, and that brings you back to the original surface line.
Okay.
And then we'll dress that down just a bit to make room for a tiny bit of filler, and then we'll finish it off. And
Okay.
we'll raise the line, as we talked about earlier, out a tiny bit beyond this, and then when we finish it, you won't see panel, you'll see one panel.
I see.
That makes sense? Okay.
Yep.
But this is very important. A lot of times the repairs, there's two problems that I see a lot in other unschooled people doing this.
Okay.
Firstly, they just lay it right over it,
Okay.
and that's not the way you do it, because you're creating a stress riser right in this area, right between the new and the old.
Right.
So you have to kind of taper this one down, taper that one down, and then build up between them such that when the vibration happens, it happens over a much larger area. It doesn't just happen in there,
In one
because
spot.
all these cars vibrate. And
Sure.
Corvettes are real good at that.
Okay.
So you must, when you make a transition, spread it out, do it I'll actually do you a diagram here, it might help. Let's say this is the transition. We'll blow up the scale. The
Okay.
typical guy just puts a mound over it, okay?
Yeah.
All right, well that right there is a stress riser.
Right.
What we got to do is get rid of that.
Okay.
V that out, build up little layers of mat and one cloth, and now that load is spread over a much greater
yeah,
area.
I
So
see
when the
that.
vibration happens, there's no focusing it on that one little area anymore.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Now, fiberglass cars are known sometimes to develop cracks and
Correct.
and so on. It looks like there's a crack here that's been
Well, there's a
repaired.
number of surface cracks that will be revealed to us when we strip the paint,
Okay.
because we're just getting ready to be at that point where we've done the physical repairs, as you can see, and then we'll strip it. If we find amateurish repairs, then we'll re-repair those, because there's nothing worse than doing a really good job on the rest of it and then have one small part fail because some guy 20 years ago did it incorrectly and you haven't really found that out yet.
Right.
So
now
that's
this
why
is
we
literally a 60-year-old car body.
Yeah, and it's older than that.
Yeah, well, it's 61.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, the point is that it's been through a lot of owners, probably a lot of different people with different priorities, and but as an example to start with, it's actually a very good car, because if you line side it, a lot of the door panels line up with the openings. You don't see massive lumping and that sort of thing. When these cars were new, they were awful. They were just awful, and that was because they were very early in the process. It was a limited production car, so Chevrolet was making them, and then they're beautiful cars. Yeah. But they had a lot of birthing problems that went along the way, but they're surprisingly intact, and that's because they're made out of fiberglass. Fiberglass will last indefinitely, certainly for 100 years. Metal, not so much. Right. But there are metal elements in this that we have to attend to, and we'll have to take care of those. But the customer, on our request, has brought us all of the pieces that are going to go on the car, the hinges to fit up the deck lid, this medallion, all of these different tail light openings and things will fit up all of the pieces, because we don't want to find out about it later. We want to get that all in on the original repairs. Okay. Make sure everything opens and closes.
Yeah, it sounds like extra work to put everything back on it before you take it off. It is,
and a typical person, they just jump in and start repairing it right now. Right. But that's a mistake, because I don't know if that door shuts properly. Right. When am I going to fix that after I've already painted the car?
Right. Now it looks like it does, but you don't have the latching hardware.
No, you don't until you have the latches. Right. And that's what we asked him. He did not bring them in originally, and then he was kind enough to bring in everything. Okay. And now we're going to put the car back together. Okay. We're going to see how things fit. Okay. And if there's a problem, we'll disassemble it, fix it, and put the trim back on until everything fits properly, and then we'll blow it apart again. Okay. So you've got to go through that intermediate step. Gotcha. For everything to fit properly. Everybody's idea of what is good enough now has changed. Okay. When these cars were built, nobody much cared. As time went on, it got worse. Okay. Okay, so I may have told you about the case where we found something very interesting in one of these cars on the nose, which of course gets a lot of hits, especially the guys that drove these things, if you know what I'm saying. Yep. So we found that the front end on one of, I think it was a 60, we saw that there was like a lumpiness in the front. Yep. So we ground it down, and we found my favorite of all time. Someone had taken a Campbell soup can, didn't even bother to take the label off, and riveted it over the hole that was made in the accident, and then put about that much Bondo over it. Okay. I mean, it was a memorable event.
Now there's an example of a surprise when you're stripping the car down.
Yes, and we could have painted right over it, but it would have raised its ugly head later, because that thickness and then the thinness, you would have seen some waviness there, and it's good that you got to get into past all the paint. Right. This thing has maybe 5 or 6 coats of paint. We're going to have to strip it down to the fiberglass to see where all the problems are. Yeah. And then we fix them properly so they don't come back later. Okay.
So I guess fitting up even includes, of course, the
gas door. You can see is not particularly good. It's big here and little here, and to the extent that we can, we'll try to address that.
And you can even see
the door gap is horrifying right here. Look at this. Stick my finger in there. Down here, you can't get a piece of paper in it. So it's all over the place, and without the hinges and the latches, to put it in its finished condition, I have no idea until all that's done. So we'll strip it, we'll put the hardware back on it, and then these kind of things here will be addressed, and not with Bondo. Okay. Right. You don't put Bondo here; it's not going to last. Right. It has to be fiberglass. Okay. And then you cut it back, and then you re-gap it like we did the other cars. This car is actually not too bad if you look at it. You can feel. Just run your finger down there. If you feel it getting wide and narrow, that's not good. This one is not too awful bad. You can see there's a wide spot right there, and then this is actually pretty good, and it's consistent. And then it gets down here, and it's nothing. Yeah. So that door might actually be hitting the body. Okay. So we got to address all that. Then we strip it, and then we can paint it.
Right.
Not unless and until. And until all the parts are present and with the car, and that's why we've asked the customer to bring everything that goes on this car, and we'll make a determination whether we want to assemble it and check all the fitment.
Okay.
But we don't want to be going back and forth.
But ultimately, when
to
you're
do that,
done with this, you'll be painting it as well.
that's correct. We're going to do all the bodywork, but we got to clean up the gaps first.
Right.
Make sure everything fits properly.
But at the end of
The
delivery,
end game, this car is going to be painted black.
painted, all the trim is going to be on it,
Exactly.
and then
Well, we're gonna paint it black,
mechanically it goes on.
And then
to someone
the
else.
trim goes back on again because we already know that the trim fits properly.
Okay, right.
We might have new made trim on an old car, and that may have giant gaps. Maybe we can
Right.
pull the body panel up to it, maybe we can't. All those things have to be decided and worked out before we get to the bodywork and paint stage.
Okay.
So when it goes back together, we already know everything fits.
Okay, well this is a great start to a
Yep.
fun project.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So you said it's going to be black.
Yes, and that's the toughest color other than silver.
Yeah,
Silver makes black look like a child's play, but black is tough
yeah.
because
well, right
it
now
shows everything.
it's what is that, a dark brown currently?
It's a brown with an unmentionable name. I'll let you figure that one out. Okay?
Thanks, JB.
You bet.